Before we begin, thank you very much to Not Big Enough Convoy for pitching in over on Ko-fi. How big is enough? Seriously, I've had this question since I became an adult. No one will answer me. How big is enough for you? You'd never tell me. You just imply it, and then you get mad and walk away. Story of my life. But thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you for helping to keep the channel going and the daily content coming. Always appreciate the support that I'm getting because it genuinely is keeping this whole thing afloat. So thank you very much. Now, something in the new announcements got me thinking about a particular habit of Hasbro's. So you'll notice the deluxe arrangement of figures, the next wave of toys that we have on display, and it's a pretty generous arrangement of 5 figures in like 2 new molds, 2 heavy retools, and a relaunch of a previously hard to get high demand figure. It's actually a pretty good run, right? Really, really nice little set of figures, and frankly, like, knowing the molds they came from, the 3 existing ones are really good. I have no reason to doubt Smokescreen or Power Glide. The fun part here is that the wave itself is almost entirely made up of red and white robots, which is like weird to me because I have been around Hasbro long enough to know that is not their usual MO. The typical toy logic on the storefront side is you don't want the product to look too similar to each other because children are very simple-minded creatures, and if you have too many things that look alike, they might be scared and confused and go, "I've already got that toy." Your red and white transformer is definitely a truck. That is a plane. More to the point, they don't want it to feel like they're putting out similar product to each other. They want the product to be as diverse from each other as possible. But weirdly enough, the way things have worked out, and I don't know if this is just like it's easier to make all these red and white bots at the same time at a factory level, or it just happened to be these toys' turn. Somehow, we have an entire wave full of red and white bots. And it's such a break from Hasbro's usual game because, frankly, they are terrified of releasing toys that are either in monochrome colors or colors that are way too close to each other. And I'll give you the example, and we'll give you the whole rundown, at least the ones I can remember. Let's take a look back at the original run of Beast Wars toys, okay? So your Wave 1 Beast Wars toys were Waspinator, who's fine, but also Dinobot, Cheetor, and Tarantulas. Now, Cheetor came later, but still, he eventually worked into the box of 4 deluxes that you got, so it's still necessary for consideration. So you think about those toys, you think about those waves. Originally, Tarantulas was supposed to look like this. He was going to look like an actual tarantula, translucent plastic, mind you, but he was going to look like your standard brown tarantula. Well, someone at Hasbro kind of looked at that. Hasbro or Kenner, it's kind of iffy at the time. Point being, someone higher up said, well, that's way too much in like the brown yellow category, because even Waspinator's got half yellow colors in beast mode. And then you get Cheetor, Dinobot, and now this. And yeah, you're dealing with a lot of very similar colors going on, which is how we ended up with the tarantulas that we know today in these dark purple colors instead. Now, researching today is a lovely thing. There are such a things as purple tarantulas. I was going to show one, but then I remembered how many arachnophobic friends I have, so I'm just going to leave that off and hope that the plastic spider on screen right now doesn't trigger anything too bad. But there is such a thing as a purple tarantula, not with the yellow striping. That's completely made up for the sake of, toy. But the change was forced because we have just too much similar product on the shelf at the same time, which kind of makes a little bit of sense, but it's still weird that a tarantula ends up purple when they're primarily known to be dark brown, black, normal brown. In a similar wavelength, Wave 3 was going to see the release of Buzzsaw and this version of Tigatron, who was originally slated to just be a normal looking tiger. You know, that all made sense. So that seemed to work for me. However, again, too much in the yellow, brown, orange category for Hasbro, especially if there's any Wave 1 leftovers. You know, so again, they decide we can't do that. We need variety on the shelves. Swap it up, swap it up. And thus we got the Tigatron that we know and love today. This one had huge ramifications. I want you to understand, like, imagine how different the Beast Wars cartoon would have been if, if Tigatron had just been a normal tiger in the jungle rather than the Siberian white tiger that was in the Arctic. Vastly different show. You'd have a whole setting in the series that would never have been seen. So a lot of visual variety thanks to this in the cartoon. Different setting. Very important sometimes just to keep the cartoon looking fresh. Similar to how Wave 1 can't have too many brown toys. But yeah, this completely changes the profile. Not to mention the fact that, one, the colors just look better. I'm sorry, the teal and orange don't work. And also separates him a lot from Cheetor. I think he would have gotten mixed up in Cheetor too much being yellow-orange. This is a case where I kind of agreed with Hasbro. This is kind of a necessary, all right? So I will give them credit. Sometimes it's the right call. Sometimes it's just weird. Let's move forward to RID 2001. Now, the original Baldigus, the super cool repaint of Bruticus that everyone went nuts for when we first saw it. Here's how the Takara Car Robots version looks. And it's a beautiful figure of gold, not gold. It's not gold, it's not GPS, but it's kind of like a mustard yellow. I have one. I have a vintage one. Only missing like a couple of guns and everything. It's a very, very nice piece. But yeah, this is how he looked in the cartoon. This is the first toy. Hasbro got a little bit terrified of just how much yellow is going on in this design, especially because Armorhide was there, who also kind of blends into that color. So they decided, no, we need to switch this up a lot. We need to switch this up. So instead, we get gray parts and an Arctic camo Armorhide, who looks absolutely now it's not even remotely close. If anything, this seems like it's gone in the opposite direction. If anything, the gray makes them more monochrome. But yeah, for whatever reason, they just really got cold feet at how much yellow was going on that toy and decided gray the whole thing out and change that leg to blue immediately. Now, obviously, they would kind of go back on this as the years went on. We had both the Urban Camo redeco that was all gray, and we had the Tiger Stripe Camo that was back to the yellows, and all yellows. It's kind of weird. If you mix and match your Ruinations, you can eventually get a close approximation to Baldigus. It's just weird how they decided to do that. It's also kind of why they sunk their chances at getting Walmart exclusives for a few years, because they put out too many of these guys that didn't sell. Moving on to our model, let's get to one of the most famous examples of when they got color shy. So here we have Shockwave from Micron Densetsu, or more properly, we have Tidal Wave from Armada. Here in a lovely cartoon accurate deco on the original toy, and it looks lovely. I think it's a really cool looking Decepticon in this one. The problem here is that Hasbro was already planning a very large black and purple robot in the form of Universe 1.0 Razor Claw. So they decided we can't have this many purple toys on the shelves. This is also clashing with a few other purple toys that were coming out around the same time. So someone had to change. They threw a dart. It landed on Tidal Wave. A screen, like an on-screen character in an upcoming cartoon. We need to change him and not the non-show, barely any fiction repaint of Tigerhawk. I've never understood this decision. The resulting deco I have nostalgia for, but frankly, it just is not as good as the original Takara Deco. Not even close. And this was their solution to we have too many purple toys. It wasn't to like redeco Universe Silverbolt or Universe Razor Claw, who were both like heavily purple toys. No, 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 no. This one has to go. You know, the on-screen character. I didn't understand this unless this was like a production process level, like Silverbolt and Razorclaw were already in the works and already being produced, and Tidal Wave came later in Armada, so that's the one they had the chance to change. But you'd think like if they had actually had like heads up from Takara, oh hey, by the way, we're doing this big purple guy, you'd think they would be like communicative like that. Now, I'm going to throw the next one in here to be completely fair, because this one kind of worked to Hasbro's favor. So here is Superlink Roadbuster. Now, you can see grayed out parts, right? Gray thighs, gray upper arms, gray missile, gray feet. So, yeah. Now, in the one case, you can make an argument that this kind of tones the color scheme down, makes it a little bit more focused, and thus look a little bit better. And in that sense, I would tend to agree. However, Hasbro's version introduced the mustard yellow plastic to the overall design. And yes, I think this makes him a little bit too colorful. It looks like the original toy got left out in the sun for approximately 85 years. But this is accurate. Hasbro, in an attempt to actually take the gray out of a toy, actually made it more screen accurate than it originally was. I will give them credit for that. That's the change that actually made sense. And why Takara had like an incorrect version released is beyond me. It was like they didn't really do that throughout the Unicron trilogy. So yeah, point to Hasbro. This time it worked in your favor. We'll fast forward a year and figure out where it didn't work in your favor. So this is Galaxy Force Cydos, and it's a monochrome gray rhino with a little bit of red thrown in, maybe a tiny bit of gold here and there. So nothing like thrilling deco-wise, but it's a rhino. It's gray. It's supposed to be gray, right? And that's how he looked in the cartoon. Cybertron Backstop. A toy I featured on Plastic Attic because it really didn't hold up to any of the other Cybertron Scout class toys. And yeah, for some reason, of all colors Hasbro could have tinted this figure, they went with purple. They added a purple hue to his skin. You know, like so many rhinos you see in the wilderness. This is kind of where I would have preferred you to go brown. That's all I'm saying. So yeah. Not the great change. Weird change. Weird change. Purple rhinoceros. Odd. Now, we can't really get into this without also acknowledging that roughly around the same time and continuing on, Hasbro also had another color fear when it came to toys. It wasn't just that they didn't want to release gray toys and monochrome toys, but no, they also did not want to release anything that might be screen accurate pink. One of the reasons why it took so long to get a new RC toy is because they just did not want to do a pink Transformer. And okay, fine. It's a boys brand. It took a long time to get it through their heads that we want screen accurate stuff, not just whatever. But you could see for years where they were terrified of the character of RC. So here is Energon RC, her first ever toy. And yeah, the pink is definitely subdued. There's a lot more red to the design than there is pink, and a lot of heavy black. So the pink becomes an accent color in a character where pink is supposed to be one of her primaries. And then they get scared of it completely. Revenge of the Fallen saw a on-screen RC that was completely red. And this began the experiments of swapping out her color completely and ignoring that she was ever pink. This would also be featured heavily in Transformers Prime, where they tried to change her to blue. And yes, previously there was a movie RC, a repaint of the Energon toy that was also blue. So the bluification of RC did not last long. It mostly just became like a Transformers Prime iteration of the character. Mostly when we saw RC, they really tried to turn that pink into something that could pass for red. So here is the animated RC, Toys R Us exclusive in the US, and they tried really hard to darken up that pink as much as possible and still be able to call it pink. In the cartoon, she is absolutely pink. She is G1 pink. And then this toy is borderline red. It is decade magenta. It is as close as they were willing to get. Absolutely terrified of the color being in a boy's toy line. You know, there's some logic to that, but also, like I said, eventually they figured out we wanted accuracy. So they relented, but they still didn't. So when we got to Thrilling 30 and RC's G1 design got a proper toy for the first time ever, they still wanted to downplay the pink somewhat by injecting a lot of black into the design that was never there to begin with. And this was heavily criticized on the original design when this first came out. I'm not arguing that the black doesn't look good. You know, in a way, yes, it breaks up a lot of the pink and white. It gives her a little bit more of a dynamic look. I don't even mind the black stripes in the vehicle mode. But as far as accuracy goes, this is where Hasbro started figuring out we wanted accuracy above else. It was the backlash that this toy ended up getting just for that added inclusion. And she's not the only girl that ended up this way. You know, for instance, Elita 1 also got put into that you're going to be a red toy kind of department. Even though in the G1 cartoon, she is definitively pink. She is a bright pink and a dark pink color, but her darker shade is definitely still pink. Magenta at the most. This is straight up red. This one is straight up red. And you would tell me, well, TJ, like, it's a repaint of RC. Like, obviously, they couldn't just make the same mold pink again. They had to do something to make her different. And you know what? I will agree with that. So then explain to me this Elita 1, which is still the closest we have to a brand new original Elita 1 figure. And even it is still trying very hard to lean into the red. This is still not color accurate to the original depiction in the cartoon, even though it's probably about as close as Hasbro is going to be willing to come anytime soon. Of all the toys that I think need like that upgraded deco just to get re-released, I would really like her. Aside from the fact that I think the mold is actually decent, I think, yeah, it could definitely be done more accurate. And if you're going to make Elita 1 a big deal now, if you're going to promote her ahead of RC as like the de facto female Transformers, we deserve at least one accurate depiction of the character. The most egregious color change of anything, the most like easily to spot and widespread, has to be the Age of Extinction dinobots. This is Hasbro hitting a panic button. What do you mean ILM made 4 on-screen dinosaurs that were all just big gray hunks of shrapnel? What do you mean we have to figure out how to make a toy out of that? They did. So they made toys of all the Dinobots, and they added a few more of their own, you know, a few that weren't actually in the movie. So what we ended up with was a team of 7 who basically passed as Power Rangers before Hasbro got their rights to Power Rangers. They all had this like kind of weird Sentai vibe to them, where they all shared like the same grays and black plastics, but also everyone had their own primary color and all of them were different from each other. Looked nothing like they didn't screen accurate. You had to import special editions from Takara for that, or you had to wait for Studio Series to give you that one good Grimlock. And then later this year, we're getting another Grimlock like that. But it was hysterical at the time. Like, if you wanted screen accurate Dinobots, you were screwed. Like, not a chance. Modern Hasbro is getting a little bit better at this. You know, we see Cyberworld Elita 1. Granted, her design in the show is leaning more toward like salmon colors than necessarily pink. But at the same time, I would still call this like a very pink toy. And Hasbro did not shy away from it on the toy shelves. Maybe because it's only like a $10 nothing figure, but It's definitely an improvement. It's definitely them getting a little bit braver. And hey, we had 86RC that was a retool of the Thrilling 30 figure, and basically exactly what a retail RC toy should have always been. It's screen accurate, it's primarily bright pink, works. Absolutely works. So, there you go. Hasbro has always had this weird thing with like colors, be it monochrome, too similar, too pink. But in the end, yeah, we're getting to this point where they're no longer doing that, which is great to see. It's great to see. It's just presented a lot of weird toys over the years as a result. So I know I didn't get every single one of these. If I've missed one, please feel free to talk about it in the comments section below. Always appreciated. Cheap plug for Entertainment Earth, which you can find the link in the description below. If you use that to go get your toys, then it does help out the channel as well. Thank you very much for that. Cheap plug out of the way. I'm going to get going. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.